Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to today's Keynote Tech Talk on getting ready for the Apple Watch. My name is Aaron Rudger, and I'm in the product marketing organization here at Keynote, and we're really glad that you've joined us today for what promises to be a really great, informative, and interactive session where we'll be talking about getting ready and prepared and what you need to do to get prepared for the Apple Watch and really any other wearable device that you may be considering integrating into your digital assets. So today we're going to talk about the overall wearables market, where things are going, and what the introduction of the Apple Watch will mean in terms of a disruption to that. We're going to talk about the dynamics of wearables, both in terms of how that may have an opportunity for your business, but moreover, when you've committed and made that decision to wearables as part of your strategy, what you should be considering or thinking about with regards to quality and performance and ensuring that your customer experience is as good and as high quality as it can be. We're going to talk about generally the best practices for testing and wrap up everything with questions and answers session at the end of today's session. In terms of housekeeping items, today's webcast is being recorded, so you'll be able to share it with your colleagues. We'll be following up with you afterwards with communications on how to take advantage of not only the content we're sharing with you today, but also how you can engage with Keynote more directly. If you're having any experiences with your audio that are negative, you can touch *0 for operator assistance. Your line is currently muted, and we'll be following up with you, as I mentioned before, not only with the content from the session today, but also with a lot of other information about Keynote. So we do recommend that you use your full screen mode, and with that, I'll go ahead and start the session. I'm actually joined today by Chris Carnacki, and I'd like to introduce you to Chris Carnacki. He's our senior consultant for mobile and mobile testing here at Keynote. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Aaron.
So as we get started here, let's just kind of start first with a little overview of kind of the moment that we find ourselves in today. So the Apple Watch is imminent. The latest indications in terms of when it will actually be released and available to the public are that it'll be sometime in the spring of 2015. And we really do anticipate that the adoption of the Apple Watch is going to dwarf that of what we've seen so far from the Android entrance into the marketplace last year. And so, what it is that it's really a very interesting and new revolutionary way to incorporate mobile technology on a wearable device. And so, really between the small and yet really interactive color touch display, it features a lot of interesting capabilities to interact with the device that really haven't been brought to bear up to this point. So its touch capabilities are not just simple swipe capabilities, but also it includes sensory capture for pressure, and that'll introduce a new way of interacting with your device that's really interesting and compelling, as well as this new scroll wheel on the side that you see in the image called the Digital Crown that allows for very precise interaction once you go into the watch itself beyond what you can do through touch. So between touches and swipes and pressure commands, you're also able to leverage the capabilities of the microphone that's incorporated into the device as well, which if you think about it makes a lot of sense. Voice commands will be really important in the new interface paradigm of the watch. And so Siri will feature probably quite prominently with regard to user interaction. And so that's just some of the new capabilities. I think it also includes near-field communications that will also allow for other applications like keyless entry and Apple Pay. In terms of actually developing for the Apple Watch, Apple has released with iOS 8.2 its new WatchKit development environment. And that's the wearable operating environment that will really control the new capabilities within the watch. And so it includes three main components: full applications that you can build that will live natively on the watch itself and may or may not pair with the phone. I believe that the initial implementation of the Apple Watch will require that your applications do pair with the phone, but in the future, Apple has indicated that those applications may be able to be used on a standalone basis. Then it also has actionable notifications, which are notifications that you can interact with within the watch itself and basically pass information back and forth between the watch and the phone to basically do some pretty interesting use cases with regard to interactivity within applications. And then lastly, glances, which are essentially similar to push notifications that you might experience today on the Apple phone, but without the interactive capabilities, the ability to directly command data within the context of that notification. So all told, we think that this is going to be a very important moment or disruptor for the wearables market. The initial forecast was that for the Apple Watch, they would sell probably somewhere on the order of 92 million smartwatch units by 2018, and that's a pretty hefty market capitalization that will drive for Apple. That'd be over $9 billion, by 2018. And really, this is a really interesting development because in terms of comparative to what the smartwatch market that has currently existed, that has been driven by the Android devices, you're talking the difference of significant orders of magnitude. If in the first year, by maybe some very generous estimates, Apple Watch sells 20 million units, which some projections are for that amount. If you compare that to the totality of all the Samsung and LG wearable devices sales in 2014, there were only 720,000 units which shipped. So again, you're talking orders of magnitude of difference. And so that's an important thing because smartwatches will then, we believe, and the Apple Watch in particular, feature very prominently into how you consider extending your digital strategy, the way in which you interact with and drive consumer interactions on for your products and services. And this is really just part of the broader explosion of mobility within the marketplace. And so we've already hit 75% penetration here in the United States with regard to smartphones. And the forecasts, for continued growth worldwide in other markets beyond North America and China and Asia Pacific in particular are really quite staggering. And so, overall, there will be 5 billion mobile phone users worldwide by 2017. And in fact, currently, the pace of adoption is that there are more Android phone activations per day than there are births. And so if you think about that, it's really quite staggering in terms of how ubiquitous mobility really is becoming in our day-to-day lives. And when you factor what that means in terms of how you take and exploit the opportunity to reach and engage with customers, consumers, employees even, through this new exploding channel, customer experience is really everything. And because of the nature of the environment, the form factor being smaller, the context of usage being probably a little bit less tolerant in terms of the amount of time somebody is going to be willing to spend actually working with that device. Again, because of the form factor and the nature of them being the user being mobile, customer experience is greater than ever before in terms of its importance. And really the way that we think about how you compose that customer experience is that it's a combination of design, fabulous, elegant, brilliant design that visually and through great intuitive user interface creates a captivating and compelling environment or experience for the customer. But then is also a component of that is also quality. Functionally, does that application actually work? Does it do what it was expected to do? Does it meet the expectation of the user in terms of its reliability and its functionality? And then lastly, the performance of the application. Is it slow? Does it seem not so fluid, janky? Is the responsiveness in making a request or interacting with that application meeting the satisfaction of the end user or the consumer who's interacting with that application? All of that together sums up for customer experience, and to really get the winning formula correct, you have to be able to have high scores across all three of those dimensions. And when we look at the challenges for specifically ensuring adequate quality in mobility, we think that there are four key factors that really potentially conspire to add up to some pretty significant roadblocks for many enterprises that are attempting to exploit the mobile channel. The first is that the needs of the entire organization that is really focused on creating mobile applications, the needs for those constituencies from development all the way through QA is really beginning to be blurred. And with regard to the various requirements across those organizations. And so open source factors very prominently. You need to be able to ensure and integrate with the wide variety of development environments and quality assurance environments, all the way from the development stage of the process up through QA. Secondly, the release velocity for mobile applications is only increasing, whereas it might have been maybe once every few months, let's say. Now you're actually seeing monthly releases, even potentially weekly releases of applications. And so that drives a very different process of production deployment and then feedback and incorporating that feedback. And so understanding how the app is performing once it's released into the wild and in the hands of its mobile users is really important. Thirdly, distributed teams play a greater and greater role within large organizations today that are doing their development. And so, that introduces some complexity with regard to making sure that everybody is kind of singing from the same notebook or songbook. And so, having the right kind of environments, development environments and quality assurance environments that enable a consistent, repeatable mechanism through which everybody can ensure that their process in the delivery and the deployment of the application, the development, delivery, and deployment of the application, can be measured effectively. And that's a big challenge when you're talking about a wide range of mobile devices. And that's where this last point of the fragmentation within the marketplace of not only device, viewport, form factors, OSs, but also the different flavors of OSs, the various versions of iOS or Android or BlackBerry or Windows. That also creates a very challenging scenario for the whole coverage aspect of mobile testing. So here at Keynote, one of the things that we really believe passionately about is that testing is best accomplished specifically in the mobile mode in the cloud. And there are some really good reasons why you'd want to consider testing in the cloud. And they go back to what we were talking about right at the outset with regard to wearables. In a highly disruptive marketplace where you're trying to create new environments for customers, new experiences that are dependent on these platform choices that are rapidly changing, right? Your ability to stay at pace with that change is only going to be inhibited if you burden yourself with trying to incorporate that change into your environment, i.e., by bringing in the complexity of the actual mobile endpoint into your process for development and delivery of applications, you're really introducing a lot of fragility into your delivery and your overall application lifecycle. And so we think that because the cloud gives you the ability to stay ahead of the pace of change with regard to mobile disruption, be it in terms of new smartphones, but also new categories like wearable devices, the cloud gives you great flexibility. You can test anything in the cloud. It gives you the ability to create and enhance collaboration across your organization, from the development part of the organization all the way through the QA organization. You don't have to worry about the costs associated with managing devices. And it also gives you the ability to add new efficiencies with regard to automating and automation in your testing routines. And so we think that there are some great reasons, although testing in the cloud is really great, one of the best ways to demonstrate this is to actually show you exactly how it works and what are some of the benefits. And so today what we've done is we've created a suite of mobile testing products, one of which is our interactive testing environment. And our interactive testing environment allows you to have direct control over remote devices like a Samsung Gear, for example, the wearable watch from Samsung, so that you can interact with these devices and ensure that you're delivering the kind of functional quality that you need when you're bringing new applications to the marketplace. And so doing this in a pre-production environment or a production with production-ready applications as well, all that is capable within the device cloud. And so I think what we'll do is at this point transition over to Chris. And so Chris, I believe you have you've got a real live demonstration of testing for the Samsung Gear 2.
That's right, Aaron. So what we're going to look at here is a live demonstration of utilizing Keynote's cloud platform to test your application against specifically today a Samsung Gear 2, of course an Apple Watch in the near future, or any other mobile device that you may have a requirement to test against. Aaron mentioned the Keynote really sees the cloud as the best solution for testing your mobile application or assets, be it native application, hybrid application, or mobile site, because it allows you to get away from doing things that are not things that you do best. Managing devices, managing air plans, collaborating through screenshots with other phones or cameras, having web conferences. Keynote's cloud platform allows you to get away from doing that and focus on what you do best, which is develop high-quality applications and also test those applications or sites to make sure that you're delivering the proper digital experience to your end users or customers. So what you're looking at here is Keynote's mobile testing cloud. We have a variety of phones and tablets and wearables that are at your disposal for testing, ranging from Android, iOS, Windows, and BlackBerry. Today, of course, we're going to focus on the Samsung Gear 2, as well as the Note device to the right here that it is paired with. And so what I'm looking at here, we'll see it's a Samsung N900, the Samsung Note 3, and then a Gear 2. They are already paired. We can tell they're paired, and they're just like you would have paired sitting on your desk, but again, you can remove that burden from your organization. What you're seeing here is the actual screen that your consumer would see if they had this phone in their hand and the watch on their wrist. It's not an emulator simulator. This is a real device out in the cloud. Now,
when you say in the cloud, what exactly does that mean, Chris?
Yeah, so that means that these devices are all hosted by Keynote, and they are in different data centers around the globe, so that you can test on real devices in network. So if you have a need to test on a Galaxy S5 in the UK on T-Mobile, you can test on a T-Mobile UK Galaxy S5 that Keynote hosts there. If you have need to test on an AT&T device in the US, Keynote has devices there. So the cloud being this large collection of smartphones, tablets, and wearables that are hosted by Keynote. So again, it removes that burden from your organization, but they're in multiple points of presence. So you can do testing on real live devices without sending someone from your organization to a specific location or relying on crowdsourced testing. Because of course that introduces a lot of additional noise and uncertainty to your testing.
And so they're all connected to through Wi-Fi, or how are they actually connected to the internet?
Yes, a very good question. So if we take this this Note 3 device here, what you can see is that the device is actually connected to a 4G carrier network. We also have the ability to connect it to a wireless data or wireless access point in Keynote's data centers. And because they have real live connections, they can make and receive phone calls, send and receive text messages, which you'll actually see during the demonstration here. And they can browse the internet, again, via the carrier connection or via Wi-Fi. So think about it as actually having the phone in your hand without having it in your hand. You've got access to do everything you can with that phone on your desk or the watch on your wrist, except you're doing it over the internet via your mouse and your keyboard. So let's take a look at the Gear watch here. I'm going to click on the button here that brings it live. We'll see that it is paired. We'll see the paired icon here, notification. We can slide across the screen just as we would swipe our finger. I'm using my mouse pointer to slide across the screen. That shows me that I can interact with this. Now, the big thing here, of course, is making sure that the watch is paired to the device. We can tell that it's paired for two reasons. One, we can see the pairing icon up here in the top of the device screen, but we can also navigate to the Gear Manager on the actual device itself. So if we bring up that Gear Manager, we can see that it is paired with my Gear 2. It's connected via Bluetooth. So now we can make sure that my notifications, my applications, everything are set up to push notifications to this watch. Now in the case of these early Android watches and running Android Wear, the applications themselves reside on the phone side. It's the same way that the Apple Watch is going to launch, as Aaron mentioned, is that the application itself will reside on the phone, and the watch will be simply another viewport into that application, or specifically into notifications or glances, as Apple is also calling them. So in this case, with the Gear 2, we can see that we do have a notification from an application here. In this case, it's going to be Messages. So we see that we do have an incoming notification from our Messages application. Same would be seen if a third-party application had pushed a notification to this watch. Maybe something like CNN, maybe News Republic, Financial Times, a Runkeeper. Any application that's been developed and using those APIs that it can actually push to this Gear watch, in this case, you would see our notification on the watch side. For the Apple Watch, the same is going to be true at launch, but in the coming future, Apple's made every indication that native applications will actually live and reside on the watch and be able to function without being paired to an iPhone. The case of let's say a running application, that'd be great. You don't have to carry your iPhone with you any longer, just simply the Apple Watch. And that's really going to open up a whole new slew of testing, because now you need to make sure not only does your application work properly when it's paired to a device like this Gear watch is, but also when it's not paired. Does it continue to maintain the proper functionality, even if that may be a stripped down functionality due to not having that phone paired? So let's take a real world example here, and let's actually send a notification to this watch. I'm going to do something simple, again, because unfortunately I can't force CNN to send me a notification of breaking news. I'm probably glad that I can't do that. But what I want to do is just send myself a text message, just to show that we actually can see those notifications. So we're going to go ahead and do exactly like a user would do. I'm going to say hi from Keynote, and I'm going to go ahead and send it. And we'll see that notification arrive on the actual phone, of course, because I'm sending it to myself, but then on the watch in conjunction. So once that comes through, we'll see it pop up, and then think about this as an actual use case. Maybe it is sending a notification from your application to the watch, be it an Apple Watch, an Android Wear device, whatever it may be. What we want to do is be able to report on the success or failure of that use case. This is another perfect example of why the cloud is really the perfect platform to do this sort of functional testing here. I'm going to go ahead and open up my notifications. We'll open up messages. We'll open up our message here. Now there's a couple ways we can act on this, and this is actually a good example. The message has not come through yet. So this would be a great example of waiting for a notification from your application to come through to your watch and it not appearing, right? So I want to tell my developers, hey, this isn't working properly. I want to show them what I actually can see. So what I can do here is a few different things. I can show my team what this looks like in real time. We have a built-in collaboration, kind of a live web sharing utility where other members of my team can log in and watch me control these devices in real time. Or I can actually take screenshots of the device. And what I want to do is share here, and the first is copying this URL. If I send this URL to my team members, they can log in via their web browser and watch as I share and say, hey, Aaron, look at this. I sent an alert or a notification from my application and it's not appearing on the device itself.
And I would not need to necessarily be a subscribed user to the service in order to see that?
Exactly.
Awesome.
So he can come in and take a look at it. He may have never seen Keynote before in his life, and that's absolutely fine. It's really powerful for not only sharing from QA to development, of course, kind of closing that feedback loop sooner, right, when it's still cheaper and easier to fix these bugs or these defects, but it could also be sharing with business leaders. They say, I want to see what that actually looks like on a real device. Well, your CEO might not have an Apple Watch. Maybe they do. But they may not have your application yet. So you can show them what it looks like on a real device. Maybe your chief digital officer, your chief marketing officer that wants to see what that new branding looks like on the phones or on these watches before it gets released. And you can do that using this share functionality. We can also, of course, take screenshots. There's a built-in screenshot tool here that will allow us to take screenshots as well as a recorded video of the actual device under test. So in this case, I would say, okay, let's take these screenshots. Let's share them. The other thing I can do is act on that notification. So maybe I want to, and this is a good way to do this here, let's come back, and we want to ensure that this notification is two-way. Right? It goes not only from the phone to the watch, but also from the watch back to the phone. So Android Wear allows you to say, let's view this on the device. We click on there, we see now the content on the phone itself. So you're ensuring two-way communication between the watch, or specifically the application or notification on the watch, and the actual device itself and whatever application that may be. The other thing we can do, of course, is to reply. So I'll just say, how's it going? It's one of the canned responses from Android Wear. I'm sure Apple was going to have some as well. And we can see now that I replied. We can make sure that two-way street is working properly. So it allows us to really come in and make sure that on a real device, things are working properly. Aaron mentioned WatchKit. Of course, it's going to be your new SDK in Xcode with iOS 8.2 to develop your applications, trigger your notifications, your glances, but ultimately you want to make sure that it works. Now, it'd be great if you could give every one of your developers an Apple Watch. It's probably not going to happen. So this cloud-based platform allows you to leverage Keynote's investment in Apple Watches or Android Wear watches or any other new wearable platform or OS that comes out, and allow your teams, regardless of where they're located, to begin to actually test their application, install new versions or pre-release versions of their applications to not only the devices but also the watches. There is a utility built into this platform to install your pre-release application and builds.
So I don't even have to publish it out to the store and download it through that mechanism. There's a direct upload or download, whatever feature that...
Exactly. Yeah, the applications can be pre-released, pre-built. They can be installed in a few different ways. If you already have them hosted in a publicly accessible store or an enterprise app store, you absolutely can download from there, kind of over the air. You can also have your IPA or APK file handy and install through this cloud platform through your browser here. So you can start testing before it's out in those public stores. You can, of course, also test when it's in the public markets, Google Play Store, Apple App Store, by downloading directly from those markets on the actual device itself.
So, the kind of a question that I would have is, okay, if I've taken a pre-release application and I've put it on, this remote device, and you've been saying, well, this is in the cloud.
Right.
Well, maybe that is raising some red flags in my mind about the protection or the confidentiality of that application if I don't want it to get into the hands of other people and other users. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a very valid concern. You've got your pre-release test applications, test URLs if you're testing mobile web. Keynote absolutely understands the value of your intellectual property. So what Keynote does is, in between users, because we're talking about devices here that are being shared by multiple Keynote users, these devices are cleaned. So any applications you install to the devices, any websites you visit, all of those are cleaned and cleared before the next user uses that device. And that's true if you manually terminate your session. You say, okay, I'm done with my testing, and you what we call release the device. So you put it back into the cloud for someone else. We run through a cleanup process. It's also true if you have a network issue and and you lose connection to the device. It will get cleaned. Now, of course, you also have the ability to uninstall those applications yourself exactly how you would on a phone in your hand, whether it's through the application manager on Android or through the long pressing of the application icon on an iOS device. But Keynote does, again, we recognize the value of your intellectual property, and we do remove that intellectual property from devices before it's given to another user, before the device is given to another user. Now, what we've been talking about so far is just manual testing. So you've seen me click on the device screen, click on the watch. Everything that I've done so far here is also possible to do through our automation engine. Our automation engine, of course, brings in now your kind of scales of efficiency. You can now run 24/7 unattended, lights out automation suites. So you may have a series of regression tests that you want to run against a set of applications or a series of new builds of your application. The entire process from end to end can be automated, starting from, of course, the building of your application file, your binary, an APK or IPA file, maybe built with Jenkins, with Bamboo, some other continuous integration tool or build, deploy, test tool. That tool can actually automatically install the new builds of your applications to these devices and include smartphones, tablets, and wearables. It can then also trigger a series of regression tests that you've created in Keynote's testing tool here. And that will allow you now to really bring that feedback loop even closer. So you've got your developers that that write your application. Your CI system will build the application, install it to these cloud devices, will run a series of regression tests, and will report back any failures all the way back to your developers and your QA team. And that allows, again, maybe have more testing done in the less amount of time that you're doing it today manually, and it frees up your manual testing team to maybe do some more exploratory testing or do some testing of things that cannot be done in an automated fashion today. And now, we're all worried about, today we're talking quality before it gets released. Let's make sure it's ready to go before we push it out to the public markets. But we're also, of course, concerned with, even more so, what happens once the public has it? How tolerant are your users going to be of quality issues or performance issues? Keynote's found that they're not going to be very tolerant. You've got approximately 2 seconds to grab someone's attention, let's say on your mobile website. What Keynote's platform can also help you do is now monitor the availability and performance of your mobile site or application once it's released to the public. And we do that using the same technology with real devices in the cloud, except we now layer on top of your functional tests the ability to do some timing. So we can tell you how long it's taking for a user to do some specific transaction, be it logging in, be it maybe it's even a notification to arrive from your device, your phone or your tablet to your wearable. Like how quickly is that connection being made? How quickly is someone able to perform a transaction on an actual wearable device? Again, probably much more important with an Apple Watch once the applications live natively on the device itself. But we can show you trending of your availability and your performance and how your customer experience is being affected by new releases. So maybe you have a baseline of version 1 and it tells you it takes X number of seconds to perform some user journey. You release version 2, you can immediately see how your customer experience has been affected by any changes that you may have made, whether it's in the UI of the application, whether it's in API calls that it's making to your backend systems. But you can see at day 1 of that version 2 release how your customer experience is affected and ultimately how your customers are taking in your brand and what sort of effect those changes have had on their experience.
Chris, it seems to me that if I'm doing a great job of functional testing and I'm also maybe doing some performance testing as well, I might feel pretty confident about where I sit, at a given point in my release cycle. But what are some of the other factors that could impact or influence performance, you know, once the application is in production and deployed out on devices worldwide? Are there other factors, maybe with networks or other services you might be integrating, et cetera, that might be of import there?
Yeah. Unfortunately, there are a lot of influences out of all of our controls, but of course, things like network, excuse me, things like network, be it carrier itself, so AT&T versus Verizon or T-Mobile via O3 in the UK, Vodafone in Germany, whatever that network may be, they may have their own issues with their communication and transmittal of certain protocols, be it video streaming versus simple text notifications or data. And again, as these wearable devices become more and more content rich and become more powerful viewports into that digital brand or experience that you're presenting, those are the sorts of things that are going to be much more apparent. Other things, of course, that can affect it is not only the carrier itself, but the strength of the signal that user may have in their given location. Excuse me. And that's why Keynote has the ability to, again, provide devices in many locations around the globe. So you're not just going to be testing from devices in maybe California or New York or Germany. We can put devices anywhere around the world to see exactly how your application or your service is affected by that specific regional carrier. Other things that can affect it, of course, are load. So when you're doing your functional testing today, and once it's in QA, it's pre-release, you're testing against your back-end systems that have a very small amount of load on them, generally. Let's say you're doing a new product launch, or you're rebranding, and you're pushing out all this press to your users or potential users and captive and non-captive audiences. You want them to come in and view your brand. Now, you've tested against your backend services when they have no load or very little load, but you hope there's a lot of load on your backend services, right? Their web or application servers when you actually go live into production. So load that's being generated or load that's actually on those servers can absolutely very dramatically impact your customer experience. So through Keynote's cloud, Keynote can also help do that sort of load testing to make sure that you're ready when you launch that new brand, launch that new application or service, to make sure that you've already tested the customer experience when there may be 1,000 users on your site. There may be 5,000 or 10,000 people using your application. Again, that's all part of the cloud strategy and cloud ecosystem that Keynote really believes is the best way to both test and monitor your digital assets and your customer experience of those assets. So I think, kind of holistically, what Keynote what Keynote sees as the proper methodology for testing your wearables is utilizing a cloud, because now you've got back into the business of doing what you do best, building quality applications or sites, and not simply managing phones and watches, and air plans with the local carriers. And it enables your distributed teams to test both functionally as well as performance testing and monitoring these new applications as they reside either on a device, being a phone or a tablet, or as they interact with wearables or ultimately live on those wearable devices. It also allows you to tie into your existing test frameworks and test ecosystem, so you're not simply adding another tool to your tool belt. You're really partnering and tapping into your existing resources and your existing spend on other enterprise testing tools. And those may be functional testing tools from the testing companies like HP and IBM, or of course other open source tools and frameworks like Jenkins or other continuous integration tools or Selenium frameworks for your web testing. Keynote really believes in that cloud ecosystem to allow you to leverage what you do best today and simply extend into mobile.
Cool. All right. Well, let's go back to our presentation. See if we can bring up the slide. Thank you, Chris. That was really interesting. Great demonstration. Love seeing that gear kind of light up there with all of its cool notifications and things like that. So, just to kind of help bring home a lot of what Chris was just saying about, the best practice, we think of it more as like a set of must-have requirements, really, as you're thinking about your mobile testing strategy, your mobile delivery, what approach you should have and take. And these are definitely foundational elements that we believe through our experience of actually working with customers, seeing them on a daily basis, and talking to them about how they're going to market. And some of these are the leading companies in the world with regard to creating a mobile experience. These requirements continually they continually manifest again and again, and it's the notion of being really integrated and flexible, supporting both interactive as well as automated testing, giving you access to this cloud so that you don't have to manage the issues that Chris mentioned before, being open to other frameworks, continuous integration, etc. And then also taking a holistic, a kind of closed-loop approach where it's not only the development and the testing, the delivery, the deployment, but then also taking and integrating that feedback from deployment into your development and testing approach going forward. And then lastly, also the immediate support for new operating systems. One of the advantages also to the cloud we didn't really highlight was the fact that we are continuously managing our assets and our resources so that as soon as a new version of Android Lollipop, for example, is released, we can update our devices, a subset of devices on the new operating system, as well as continuing to maintain support for older operating system versions as well on other devices so that you can test across a wealth of different environments there.
Yeah, and just like to mention, on top of immediate support of new operating system versions, kind of on day one on public release date, because Keynote has this cloud for you to utilize, we can also provide access to pre-release versions of operating systems. So for example, I had a large enterprise client that was testing on iOS 8 beta 6 months prior to public launch. Because of course you want to make sure that it works before your customers upgrade and then your application breaks. Hopefully it doesn't break. But I know a lot of people with iOS 7 specifically had issues with their applications not working any longer because Apple changed a lot of the APIs they were using. So we can provide that pre-release or beta access to versions of iOS or Android so that you can test your application, whether it's an existing application or new application, before your consumers upgrade their devices to that new operating system version.
So before we go into QA to questions and answers, Chris, one thing that I want to ask you about too, if you could just maybe touch on this a little bit, and I know you started to kind of show it when you were showing the kind of the screenshotting and kind of collaboration features of the environment, but that notion of like creating a consistent, repeatable result, right? Could you maybe talk about that just a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the cloud really allows you to ensure that your testers are using a consistent set of devices. So everyone knows what devices you're testing on, the proper operating system versions, the proper carriers. It takes away from the ambiguity of a failed test result. Today, you're using devices out of desks. You might run around the office asking someone if they've got a Galaxy S4 on Verizon with operating system 4.2. You may or may not be able to find it. And even if you can, is it running the right version? Is it running the right running the right baseband? There's all these different varieties of these devices, and having access to this cloud of devices from Keynote ensures that everyone's testing on the same devices. Everyone's on the same page. Keynote also has the facility to give you the ability to create your actual test cases or your test management within the cloud. So now a test lead or a test engineer can come in and create instructions for the test team on how they actually need to test. You might be doing that today in a Word document, an Excel sheet, but create instructions for your testers that might say, okay, open the application and log in. And not only do you give them instructions, but you give them the expected result. So again, we take away any ambiguity of what is a failure, or what is the right way for the application to behave. So you give instructions and an expected result. And on top of that, we allow you to also create an audit trail. And that audit trail can either be screenshots that are mandatory to be taken during the test execution, or it can be a video that has to be recorded of the device under test. So now when your testers come in, everyone's testing on, again, a consistent set of devices, using a consistent set of instructions, as well as creating a consistent audit trail. And that can be very useful not only for your internal usage, as far as auditing, knowing who tested what, when they tested it, what device they tested against, and what functionality passed or failed those tests, but it can also be for third-party compliance and regulatory issues. So you can make sure that you're falling within maybe HIPAA regulations or SOX regulations, and make sure that things are audited and cataloged properly. Again, that's all part of that Keynote Cloud with access to these real devices for both manual and automated testing. Those instructions and audit trails can be created.
That's great. Thanks a lot. I think as we move into the Q&A session here, one thing that I'll do is I'll just kind of share a couple resources with the audience here. The first is a link to a recent blog article where we basically just kind of summarized the latest release of the Keynote mobile testing platform and what some of the new features and capabilities are that are associated with that new release. And then, of course, additionally, if you would like to download a copy of this presentation today, if you just go ahead and click the link within this Files pod here in your Adobe Connect interface, that should initiate a direct download of the slides that were used in today's presentation as well. Won't help you with the live demonstration, of course. You'll have to view the recording of this. But Chris, maybe one question as we move into Q&A. So will Keynote have an Apple Watch when it's released?
We will. We absolutely will. Keynote, unfortunately, cannot provide access to the Apple Watch prior to its public launch, but we will have Apple Watches available for your testing once they are released.
That's great. That's great news. I mean, obviously there are a lot of people who are probably running their tests through emulated scenarios, right? And